Imagine a Stone Age family. You are most likely imagining naked people. That's okay. All of us are perverts from inside. Also, they most likely were naked, so. The point that I'm trying to make is that the very fact that at one point of time we didn't even bother to wear clothes tells us something about how much we cared about privacy rights. And that begs a question, when exactly did privacy rights become such a big thing?
The central government has made the Arogya Setu app mandatory for all government and private office goers.
राहुल गांधी का ट्वीट है, आरोग्य सेतु आपकी निगरानी का जरिया है.
Activists say that user consent, a fundamental principle for digital privacy, has been rendered meaningless.
What is the remedy if somebody misuses this data?
Just to be clear, this video is not about whether Arogya Setu app breaches our privacy or not. But it definitely sets the context in which it is even important to understand how we made this transition from being a bunch of naked folks in the jungle to privacy rights aware citizens that we are today. Now, privacy is of two types, physical and non-physical, just like violence. Physical privacy means privacy of body or a physical territory like one's house. I guess we all can agree that at some point we started to wear clothes, and then we started to live in a house, and then we started to have different rooms under the same roof with doors and all that. And with each of these progressions, the basic concept of how our houses and our bodies are essentially private spaces sort of got established. In fact, if you look at some of the mentions of privacy rights in India from the end of 19th century to almost mid 20th century, almost all of them revolved around the physical aspect of privacy and not so much about the non-physical aspect. 1895 Constitution of India Bill. Every citizen has in his house an inviolable asylum, which basically is an articulation of the classic English notion of privacy. For each man, his home is his castle, and the state could not invade it without lawful and legitimate reasons. 1925, a bill for self-governance. Mahatma Gandhi himself was a member of the committee that drafted this bill. Every person shall have the fundamental right to liberty of person and security of his dwelling and property. In fact, in 1947, our Constituent Assembly that was working on developing a constitution even debated on the possibility of making privacy our fundamental rights, although it didn't happen, at least not then. Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, a noted jurist, Sardar K.M. Panikkar, a former editor of Hindustan Times, and Benegal Narsingh Rao argued during those 1947 discussions that guaranteeing the right to privacy would impede law enforcement and the criminal prosecution of conspirators. And I think it's important to know this story because it helps us understand that even when originally Indian Constitution did not have privacy as fundamental rights, we cared about it even back then and therefore debated about it. The Indian courts have since then been pretty much sanctifying the citizen's right to privacy, mostly based on Article 21 of the Constitution, the right to life and liberty. And of course, almost all of us know about the 2018 Justice K.S. Puttaswamy case in which the Supreme Court of India held this landmark judgment that the right to privacy is protected as a fundamental constitutional right.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने आज एक बहुत ऐतिहासिक फैसले में ये बोला है कि प्राइवेसी का अधिकार एक मौलिक अधिकार है.
Across the globe, almost nobody disputes the fact that our bodies and our houses are fundamentally private spaces by default at all times. But when there is a justifiable reason for authorities and government to intrude that space, that also is fine. On a case-by-case basis and at any specified point of time or a time range, the authorities can peep inside our houses or our buttholes. Individual privacy breach for the broader social welfare. Do note these two phrases that I used, case by case and at any specified point of time or time range. Because when the government, the authorities, the police, the army, the intelligence department get the right to peep inside our houses or buttholes all the time, then it's called surveillance. And taking it a notch higher, when this is not done on a case by case basis but for everyone or at least a bigger set of population, then it's called mass surveillance. Anyway, enough of this physical aspect of privacy. It is the evolution of non-physical aspect of privacy that is so much more fascinating. I'm talking about privacy of information, what we communicate, what we say, what we chat, what we write, what we email, privacy of videos and photographs that have us in them, and the privacy of all sorts of data that we generate and create, from ordering on Amazon to Netflix to searching on Google and so on and so forth. So since when have we been bothered about the privacy of these non-physical aspects? How does 4,000 years sound to you? During the reign of the Babylonian king Hammurabi, messages were written on small clay tablets that when they're covered with a second layer of thin clay and then baked again. Once these messages were delivered, the outer envelope of clay was broken off so that the inside could be read. Similar clay envelope letters have also been recovered from the burial sites of Egyptian kings. So yeah, we have been pretty private about who reads what we write ever since we have been writing letters. It was only in the 19th century that common people like you and me got widespread access to send or receive letters. Before that, only kings, rulers, noblemen, the rich business folks could actually afford to get messengers to transmit the letters, and that by default meant those kind of letters were supposed to be private and guarded. The mass postal system as we know it today evolved in Britain in the late 17th century when Britain was not even a democracy. So what was the scene with privacy rights in this postal system back then? Before I answer that, I want to tell you that one of the earliest laws with respect to privacy can actually be traced back few hundred years before the evolution of the postal system itself. All the way back in 1361, England had something called the Justices of the Peace Act, which provided for the arrest of eavesdroppers and peeping toms. Now most of you already know what eavesdropping is, but if some of you are wondering what exactly does peeping tom mean, it refers to a man who loves to watch naked women from a hidden spot, a voyeur. The Tom in Peeping Tom stands for this guy named Thomas. And there is this crazy story from the early 11th century where this noblewoman called Godiva rode naked on a horse covered only in her long hair through the streets of Coventry in England to gain a remission of some oppressive taxation that her husband had imposed.
ठीक है, तो मैं लगान माफ कर देता हूँ.
I guess the deal was that although Godiva rides naked, you don't look at her. I mean, you can look at her feet or the horse's balls, but not directly at her. But Thomas Dude didn't listen, and so he looked, and as legend has it, he was struck blind. Some even say he died. Anyway, coming back to the privacy rights as applicable to the postal services, the earliest reference that I could dig up comes from 1844, when the British government was found opening letters of its citizens at the request of the Austrian state, and this led to some heavy protest in the British Parliament. This is what the opposition said. It is a grave thing that the correspondence of a country should be tampered with, that the private family secrets should be known. But the government argued that it needed to open these letters because of unpredictable threats to national security. Does this debate sound familiar to you?
कब कैसे किसी के फोन को इंटरसेप्ट किया जाएगा उसके कारण बने हुए हैं. आप मुझे ये बताइए, कोई आतंकवाद करने की कोशिश कर रहा है तो सुरक्षा बलों को उसके बारे में क्या सोचना चाहिए? उनकी निजता जरूरी है कि उनके आतंकवाद से मरते हुए लोगों की जान रक्षा जरूरी है.
Section 53 in the 10th chapter of the Indian Postal Act 1898 describes the penalty for opening, detaining or delaying postal articles. Whoever being an officer of the post office contrary to this duty opens postal article shall be punishable. Even China cared about privacy of correspondence. The Chinese post office evolved by the end of the 19th century and became universal in the country within the next 50 years. And given that the official in Chinese imperial government who set this up was himself a British diplomat, this dude called Robert Hart, we can sort of assume that rules and ethics applicable to the Chinese postal service are pretty much in line with what they were with the rest of the world. At least if one looks at the Article 3 of the Chinese postal law as of today, it clearly states that no organization or individual shall infringe upon citizens' freedom and privacy of correspondence for any reason except in cases where to meet the needs of state security. Anyway, so now we know that ever since we have been writing letters, we have pretty much cared about the privacy of correspondence. The next phase of evolution of privacy rights is even more dope. It involves celebrities. Let me talk about that in the second and final part of this Vatsa analysis, where I would eventually conclude, are privacy rights overrated after all? Hi, this is Amrit, your creative, funny, insightful storyteller. I make a lot of videos, I vlog about my life, I make short documentary films. 3-minute stories. Companies, non-profits, startups, schools, universities, they hire me to tell their stories or the stories of those they impact so that they can sell more, raise funds, attract people to work for them. And then there's the second type of stories where I go find amazing individuals doing amazing things, and they don't hire me as such, but I tell their stories because their stories deserve to be told. In fact, you can help me fund those stories at patreon.com/whatsapp. I come from an IIT business consulting background, but after a few years of corporate job, took a break to become a wedding photographer. I still shoot at weddings across India. There is something beautiful about creating art from weddings. There is something beautiful about creating art from anything.